Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we started working at adding in our new game assets for being able to catch monsters in our game. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code to this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There'll also be a link to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up, so let's get started. So now we have our core logic in place for being able to animate our ball and have it follow along our path. What we're going to do is we're going to move this logic to a brand new public method. And this method is what we'll be using for actually playing our ball animation. We want to go ahead and try to catch a monster. So what we'll do is we're going to add a new public method to our class, and we're just going to call it play throw ball animation. And what we'll go ahead and do is we'll just go ahead and move our code for our animation down into this method. So the first thing we want to do is we want to check to see if we're skipping our battle animations. And if we are, then we won't actually do our animation. We'll go ahead and just update our ball's position to be in the position we want it to be in. So what we'll do is we'll just add a check. We'll do if this skip ball animations. Then we want to go ahead and just do our ball. We're going to call set position. And we want to go ahead and set it to the end of our path. So we're going to do 725 by 180. Then we want to go ahead and set our alpha. So what we haven't done yet is right now our ball is always visible for our testing, but what we'd want to do is you want to go ahead and create this object and hide it, and then only have it show up when we want it to, and then that way if a monster breaks out, we'll be able to go ahead and hide our ball. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we'll do set alpha, and we're going to go ahead and set it equal to 1, and then we'll go ahead and return. So then real quick, what we'll do is let's come up to our constructor, and after we create our ball, we're going to go ahead and hide it right away. And so what we'll go ahead and do is we'll go ahead and call our set alpha method. We're going to set that equal to 0. So now what we need to do in our method is we need to know when it's finished. So currently we have this onComplete logic here where we just do our console log. So previously in all of our other functions we've been building, we've been using callbacks. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to switch over starting to use promises. And primarily this is going to help a lot with a lot of the chaining we're going to need to do for our various animations. So as an example, for our catching monster animation flow, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go ahead and throw our ball and have it animate along our path. So that's going to be our first animation. Our second one is we'll want our monster to go ahead and disappear into the ball while we're trying to catch it. So that's going to be our second animation. And then we need to go ahead and play our shake ball animation. So we're up to 3 now. And so already, if we're waiting for callbacks for each of these, we can see our codes can get very nested very quickly. And it's going to be a little bit of a pain to manage long term. And so by switching this over to a promise, we can usually do things like async and await. And then that way it's just one line of code for us to wait for that line to be finished before we process our next thing. And so we'll see an example of this once we call our new function inside our test scene here. And so to go ahead and return a promise, all we need to do is we just need to wrap our code here inside a promise, and then we can go ahead and resolve it when our onComplete's done here. So to go ahead and do this, we're just going to do return new promise. Then we'll go ahead and add in our resolve. And then what we'll do is we just need to move all of our code inside of our function that we defined up here. So now all we have to do is just call our resolve method when we want to go ahead and resolve our promise. So we'll do that in our onComplete here. So instead of doing our console log, let's go ahead and do resolve. All right, so now we have our new method. We're going to go ahead and test this from our test scene. So what we're going to go ahead and do is let's go over to our test scene. And what we'll do is we'll update our GUI here to go ahead and have a new button so we can go ahead and play this animation. So let's go ahead and jump down to our add data GUI private method. And what we'll do is we're going to make a brand new folder to store all of this in. So if we come down to the bottom of our method, we'll go ahead and make a brand new variable. We'll do const. We're going to do F3 for folder 3. And we're going to set equal to our pane. We're going to add a folder. And for our configuration, let's add our title. And what we'll do is we'll do monster ball. And we want to go ahead and have this expanded. So we'll go ahead and do our expanded, and we're going to set that to true. So now we need to go ahead and add in our button for allow us to actually play our animation. So we'll go ahead and do a new variable. We'll do const, we'll do play, throw ball, button. We'll set that equal to our folder 3. And we want to do the add button method. And so our add button method, we just need to go ahead and provide a title. And so this is going to be the label for our button. And we're just going to do play catch animation. So go ahead and save real quick. We should see our new button appear on our panel here. And now we just need to go ahead and handle when a player actually clicks on our button. So to go ahead and do that, we're going to reference our play throw ball button. And then we're going to go and use the on method to go ahead and add event listener. We want to listen for the click event. So now for our click event, we're going to go ahead and do our function. And we're going to go ahead and make it an async function. And the reason for that is we're going to go ahead and await for our ball throw animation that we just did. So we're going to go ahead and do await, and we'll do our ball. And now let's go ahead and call our play throw ball animation. So then we'll go ahead and save, and now let's go ahead and test our changes. So we're going to press our button. Oh, nothing's happening. If we come back to our code real quick, let's go into our ball class. Yes, so for our throw ball animation, what we actually need to do is before we start our animation, we need to reset our ball's position and make it visible. So that way we can replay our animation repeatedly. So what we'll go ahead and do is, let's go ahead and reference our ball game object. We're going to go first, we'll set our position, and we want to go ahead and set this to the start of our path. So we'll do 0 for our X, we'll do 500 for our Y. Let's go ahead and do our alpha. So we'll do our ball, we'll do set alpha, and we'll go ahead and set this to 1. So now we should be able to do our catch animation. So now we'll see our ball will appear, and we can animate it along our path. All right, so our next animation we want to go ahead and work on is we're going to go ahead and have our ball shake after it catches our enemy. So we're going to finish our animations tied to our ball, and we'll come back to our enemy monster in a few. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to make a new method, and this is going to be for our play shake ball animation. And so for this animation, all we want to do is we're going to go ahead and use a tween, and we're going to go ahead and have it update our X and Y values. So then that way we can go ahead and just have our ball shake back and forth. And so what we're going to do is we're also going to return a promise for this. So let's go ahead and copy that line of code here. We'll go ahead and paste it. And then what we'll want to do is first we're going to check to see if we're skipping our battle animations. And if we are, we just want to go ahead and do our resolve right away so we can return early from our promise. And then we want to go ahead and create our tween. So to go ahead and create our tween, we'll do this. We'll reference our scene. Let's do our tweens to grab our tween manager plugin. We'll use the add method, and then we'll need to provide our configuration. So for our animation, the first thing we'll do is our duration. So this is how long it's going to go ahead and last. So we'll do 150 milliseconds. We're going to add a repeat delay. And so what repeat delay does is if your animation repeats a number of times, this will introduce a delay between each time we play our tween animation. And so as an example, if I want my ball to shake 3 times, I could have it shake once, wait our 800 milliseconds, shake the second time, and then wait another 800 milliseconds. So that's how that works. So next we'll go ahead and do our targets. So we need to reference our ball for our game object. Next we want to go ahead and do our X. So this is the property we're going to target. So we're going to reference our ball's X property, and we're just going to go ahead and increment it by 10 to have it move. And so then what we'll go ahead and do is we're going to do yo-yo. So then what will happen is after our animation moves it over 10 pixels, yo-yo is going to go ahead and have it come back the other 10 pixels. That way it's back in the original position. And then next we need to go ahead and do our repeat. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to do 2 for the time being. Let's add in a delay. And so we'll do 200. And so this is a delay before our animation starts. Now let's go ahead and add in our ease. So for our ease, we'll do our phaser, we'll do our math. Let's do easing. And we're going to go ahead and do our sign, and let's do in out. So then finally, we need to go ahead and do our on complete callback for once this is finished. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll just add our function, and let's go ahead and call resolve, and so we can return from our promise. All right, so what we'll do is let's jump back over to our test scene. So after we play our throw ball animation, let's go and do a wait, we'll do our ball, and let's do our play shake ball animation. And so this is one of the reasons I want to go ahead and switch over to a promise for this. Is this way we can go ahead and just have our shake animation play immediately after this one. If we were to continue with our callbacks, what we would have had to do is provide a callback like this, and then this logic would have been up inside here. And as we chain more and more animations, this just becomes very nested and can get very messy. So just by using our async and await, now we can just turn our code into one line, and we'll wait until it's finished before we do our next one. All right, so now we'll go ahead and play our catch animation button. We'll see now our ball is thrown. It shakes as we try to catch our monster. Nice. So one thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and parameterize the number of repeats we want to go ahead and do, because we'll want this to be dynamic based on our chance of catching the enemy monster. And so what we'll go ahead and do is let's add that as an argument, and we're going to go ahead and add a default value so it's not required. So then what we can do is we'll just go ahead and pass that here. And now if we just test our code, it should still work the same way it did before. All right, so now we have our animations working. We're going to go ahead and add a few more public methods to our class here. So that way we can do things like hide our path here, and we can show it dynamically. So what we'll go ahead and do is let's come up above our animations, and we're going to go ahead and add a couple of public methods. The first one we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add hide. And so this is going to allow us to hide our ball after we finish our animation. And so during battle, if the enemy monster breaks out, we're going to need a method to go ahead and hide this, so then that way our ball will disappear. So what we'll do inside our method is we're just going to do this, our ball. We'll go ahead and call set alpha, and we'll go ahead and set this equal to 0. So next, we're going to go ahead and add a show and hide method to go ahead and show and hide our path here, so we can use it for debugging, and we don't have to render out every time we want to run our code. So what we'll do is we'll do show ball path, and so for this method, we're going to reference our ball path graphics, and we'll call our set alpha method, and we'll go ahead and set it equal to 1. Next, we'll go ahead and do our hide ball path, and we're going to do the same thing with our alpha, but we're just go ahead and set it equal to 0. So we'll go ahead and set that equal to 0. So because now that we have these methods, we're going to come up to our create curve path method, and we're going to go ahead and hide our graphics game object right out of the gate after we create it. So after we do our draw, let's go ahead and reference our ball path graphics. We'll call set alpha, and we'll go ahead and set that equal to 0. So now when our scene restarts, we can see our regular battle scene, but we don't actually see our graphics. And if we do our ball animation, we see everything works just like it did before. So what we'll do now is let's jump over to our test scene. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hide our ball after our animation is done. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a checkbox to allow us to go ahead and show our path here, so we can go ahead and use it for debugging. So what we'll do is above our button, we'll go ahead and add in our checkbox. So to do this, we'll need to go ahead and create a parameter to store our value we need to reference. And so we'll do const, we're going to go ahead and do f3 params. We're going to set that equal to an object, and what we'll do is we'll call this show path, and we're going to set it equal to true. So then what we'll go ahead and do is we need to go ahead and create a binding for this. We can have our button appear, our checkbox appear. So we'll do add binding. We're going to do our f3 params, and we want to go ahead and reference show path, since it's one of the values from there. And now we need our config. And so for our config, we'll go ahead and do a label. And for our label, we're just going to go ahead and do show path. So if we go ahead and save, we should see our new show, checkbox here show up in our scene. So now all we need to do is now we just need to add an event listener for when we change this value here. So to go ahead and do that, we're going to go ahead and use the on method. We want to go ahead and listen for the change event. And so when we get the change event, we're going to go ahead and get our value. And so what we'll go ahead and do, so if our EV value is true, then we want to go ahead and show our ball path. So we'll do this. We're going to reference our ball, and we'll call our show ball path. Otherwise, if it's false, we're going to go ahead and hide it. So we'll do this, we'll do our ball, and we'll do hide ball path. All right, and because of our logic of how we have it right now, we're going to go ahead and come up to our method where we create our ball object, and we're going to go ahead and show our path by default. So after we create our ball, let's go ahead and call our method, and we'll do show ball path. So now when our scene refreshes, we should see our path automatically rendered onto our scene, and if we uncheck our box, we hide it, and if we check it, we show it. So now we have all of our animations in place for our ball. The last thing we need to do is for our animation, we want to go ahead and have our enemy monster disappear into our ball as part of our catch animation. So to go ahead and do this, we're just going to go ahead and use a tween to go ahead and update our monster's alpha to have it disappear from our scene, and then we can go ahead and have it reappear if we fail to catch the enemy. So to go ahead and do this, we're going to go ahead and add two methods to our testing class here. So we'll come to the bottom of our class, and the first one we're going to do is we'll do our catch enemy. So we go ahead and create a private method. We'll do catch enemy. What we're going to do is we'll go ahead and return a new promise. Let's add in our resolve. And what we're going to want to do is for our tween, we'll do this. We're going to reference our tweens. Let's do add. And then for our configuration, let's do our duration. We're going to do 500 milliseconds. For our targets, we want to go ahead and target our enemy monster game object. So we'll do our enemy monster. And now we want to go ahead and target our alpha property. And so on our alpha property, we want to go ahead and do from 1 to 0. And so we'll go ahead and do from 1, we'll do start at 1, and then we'll do 2, we'll do to 0. So this will just go ahead and animate our alpha property from 1 to 0. It's going to make our game object fully visible, and then it's going to make it transparent. So after we do our alpha, we want to go ahead and just do our ease. Let's do our phaser, our math, our easing, and let's go ahead and do sign, and we'll do in out. Lastly, we want to go ahead and do our on complete. And so for our on complete, we'll go ahead and just resolve our promise. All right, so then we want to go ahead and do the inverse of this. So if we fail to catch our enemy monster, we need to have it reappear into our scene. And so we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to go ahead and update our alpha from 0 to 1. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to copy this full method here. Let's go ahead and paste it. And we'll do catch enemy failed. And we'll go ahead and just update our values. And so we want this to be from 0, start at 0, and we want to go to 1. Alright, so now what we can do is if we go up to our logic for our button, we're trying to catch our enemy monster, we can go ahead and reference our new animations. And so after we throw our ball, we want to go ahead and hide our enemy monster. So we're going to call our catch enemy private method. Then we can go ahead and do our shake ball animation. So let's go ahead and pass in 2. So we're going to test this. And then we want to go ahead and hide our ball. And then we want to go ahead and have our catch enemy fail. So we go ahead and have it reappear. So if we jump over to our scene, we should be able to test. So let's go ahead and play our animation. We'll see our ball throws, our enemy disappears, and then it shakes. And then we go ahead and have our ball disappear and enemy reappears. What we want to go ahead and do is after our animation is done shaking, we want to have a brief period of time, so a little bit of a pause before we proceed to our next animation. And so there's a few different ways we could do this. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and introduce a new method, sleep, which is basically going to be a promise-fied version of the set timeout. And this will give us a way to go ahead and wait for so many milliseconds in our game before we proceed. And so to go ahead and do this, we'll create a new utility class for this. So if we go into our utils, let's make a new file, and we're just going to call this timeutils.js, and we're just going to go ahead and make a new function. So let's go ahead and do export function. We're just going to call this sleep, and we're going to expect one argument, and it's going to be milliseconds. So then what we'll do inside our function is we're just going to return a new promise. And so for our promise, let's add in our resolve. And all we want to do is just call set timeout. And then for our set timeout, we want to go ahead and call resolve after the number of milliseconds that we specify. And so all we're doing here is we're just using set timeout to provide a function we want to run after so many milliseconds. And so for that function, that's just going to be resolving our promise. So if we jump back to our test scene, what we should be able to do is after our shake animation, let's do a wait. We'll go ahead and use our new sleep function, and we're just going to do 500 milliseconds. So now if we go ahead and test our changes, if we go ahead and, actually what we want to do for our catch enemy failed, we need to go await this since we're waiting for the animation to finish. So let's go ahead and play our catch animation. We see our ball throws, we catch our enemy monster. All right, and we go ahead and wait before we go ahead and do our other logic. All right, so now that we have our full animation working for how we're going to go ahead and catch our monsters, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to move some of our logic from our test scene over to our actual enemy battle monster class. And so we're going to go ahead and move our two methods that we created here for catching our enemy. So that way they'll be available to us once we go ahead and integrate this with our battle scene. So let's go ahead and open up our enemy battle monster class. And what we'll do is we'll come to the bottom of our class. And we're going to go ahead and just copy these two private methods. So let's go ahead and just grab our code. We'll go ahead and paste it over here. So the first thing we're going to do is we want these to be actually be public because we'll be calling these from our battle scene. So we're going to go ahead and do play catch animation. And so let's go ahead and just rename this. We'll do play catch animation. And then for our second method, we'll go ahead and do play catch animation failed. So now what we need to do is we just need to go ahead and update our references. And so we'll go ahead and instead of referencing tweens, we need to go ahead and reference our scene. And so we'll do this, our scene.tweens. And then for our game object, this is going to be our phaser game object. So we'll reference our protected property, phaser game object. We need to do the same thing down here. So let's go ahead and update our references. And so we'll go ahead and reference to our scene. We'll do our tweens. So one minor change we're going to go ahead and do to both of these methods is we're going to go ahead and check to see if we're skipping our battle animations. And if so, then we'll go ahead and just do our logic to hide or show our monster. So let's do our if statement. We'll do if we are skipping our battle animations. We'll go ahead and return. And so what we'll want to go ahead and do is if we are skipping our animations, we want to go ahead and resolve our promise. And we want to go ahead and just update our alpha. So we'll reference our game object. We'll call set alpha. And we'll go ahead and set this equal to 0 if we are playing our catch animation. And we want to go ahead and copy this. Let's place it down in our catch animation failed. And we'll go ahead and set this to 1. And then we'll go ahead and set this equal to 1. All right, so one last change we're going to do is let's jump back over to our preload scene. Now that we're done testing our changes, we're going to go ahead and change this back to our title scene. All right, with that brings this video to an end. In our next video, we'll continue working on our feature, and we're going to focus on our inventory scene and our battle menu, and adding in support for being able to use our capture items. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more Great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.